some of their homes.
Fox Weather's Will Nunley in Fort Myers, Florida, says first light will likely reveal scenes of devastation. The storm has knocked out power to more than 2 million customers in Florida. Restoration crews are moving into the impacted areas, waiting for the winds to subside to begin repairs. With 150-mile-an-hour winds at landfall, Ian was one of the strongest storms ever to hit the U.S. Vice President Harris is capping her 4-day trip to Asia with a stop at the demilitarized zone dividing North and South Korea. Her visit comes on the heels of North Korea's latest missile launches and amid fears that it may conduct a nuclear test. Big gains on Wall Street Wednesday. The Dow climbed 548 points, NASDAQ up 222, the S&P 500 closing 71 points higher. America is listening to Fox News.
Happy day. This is Claire Manglania from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Recapping this hour's Fox News alert, Hurricane Ian is moving across central Florida after making landfall Wednesday afternoon on the state's southwest coast. Weather Service warns heavy rains from the storm could bring severe flooding to parts of central Florida. On the Gulf Coast, there are reports of homes being destroyed. There's promising news about a potential drug treatment for Alzheimer's.
Japanese drug maker Eisai has been working on a drug called lecanemab since 2007. And after conducting a study that included 1,800 people with early-stage Alzheimer's, they found the drug reduced cognitive decline by about 27%. Eisai's CEO says their next step is to present the findings to the FDA. A Biogen drug had been the main Alzheimer's drug treatment, but its efficacy was questioned, it was expensive, and Medicare coverage of it was limited due to those factors. While the new drug has shown better outcomes for patients, it still works in much the same manner as Biogen's previous drug, focusing on clearing out a protein from the brain known as beta amyloid. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
In baseball, Yankees slugger Aaron Judge has tied the American League record for the most home runs in a season.
Judge had been stuck on 60 homers for over a week, but he made history in Toronto.
And the 3-2. Drill deep to left field. This could be it. See ya. He's done it. Number 61. He's been chasing history, and now he makes it. He and Roger Maris are tied with 61 home runs, the most anybody has ever hit in a single season in American League history.
That's how it sounded on Yes Network. The homer coming off of Blue Jays reliever Tim Meza. The Yankees won the game 8-3. New York will have Thursday off before returning home for a weekend series against the Orioles starting Friday, giving Judge a chance to set the record in Yankee Stadium. I'm Eric Messersmith, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Tell me about it, stud.
Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Festival is back on Saturday, October 22nd. We rockin' and rollin' at the Dusitani Guam Resort from 2 to 10 p.m. Bring your friends and come dress in your best grease costume to win up to $500 in cash and prizes. So bust out those leather jackets and 50-style outfits as we party the night away at Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Fest. Don't be a square. Get your tickets now at craftbeerfestguam.com or cruise on by any 76 Circle K location. Now that's cool, baby.
Choice Broadcasting introduces their unbeatable lineup of morning show.
Hands down winners of Guam's morning radio battle.
Daryl Lizama grooves his way through Boss 104 playing Guam's favorite classic hits.
Morning mouth Ray Gibson shakes the cage on 93.3 The Point.
And now, we are proud to announce the Morning Blender with Kyle Mandapat, mixing it up at sunrise on Star 101.
If you're an advertiser trying to reach the most valuable ears, we've got the shows that listeners have been tuning into for decades.
One call gets all three.
671-888-7346. That's 888-REIO.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the United States, of the Constitution of the United States, always starts the program here on The Point. You're listening to Tall Tales with Jose Martinez, and it is time for Jemmy You Got Me. Meet the Press. Our version is Press the Meet. We read the local editorials, the Post. I don't know what day it is anymore. It's been about 2 years now, a year and a half, since the Post has done anything close to a local editorial. They regurgitate editorials from the States, which it's not bad, but they have nothing to say about what's going on here on Guam.
It's their business plan.
Yeah. Whatever works, they're still selling rags. But the PDN has one. It's a feel-good piece. The National Weather Service officials key to the island's safety. While most days on Guam are marked with beautiful weather, atmospheric conditions can change, sometimes quickly. Heavy rains, gusty winds, and rough seas can create dangerous situations on land and water. People have been killed and injured in hazardous surf and flash floods. Thunderstorms cause decreased visibility on roadways, and flooded roads can result in accidents and expensive damage to vehicles. And if you walk out in the rain, you'll get wet. To keep our community safe, the National Weather Service needs to get out clear information with specific advice to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible. I don't know. I'm going to keep on. Their work over the years has played an integral role in Guam's safety and preparedness when it comes to tracking typhoons and relaying this important information throughout the community. The Weather Service takes the job of informing the public seriously and is trying to improve its message to reach more people in the community. And thankfully, our partners at NWS Guam, that's National Weather Service Guam, are great proponents of social media who keep their information up to date regularly. By updating our mission, we acknowledge that to keep Americans safe and enhance the economy, we must look beyond the forecast to transform the way people receive, understand, and act on information. Landon Aguilette said, a warning coordination meteorologist for the National Weather Service, Guam. So we want the clear, concise communication to enable people to be ready, to be prepared to take action. As part of that effort, the National Weather Service had an outreach this week to work with media representatives. Aguilette said it was the first such outreach in the last decade. In 2018, Aguilette conducted research about social media and weather information on the island. He said 800 surveys were collected from the public, and more than 90% of survey participants said that weather communications on Guam can be improved. The National Weather Service Guam Forecast Office has recognized that many people get their information from social media, particularly Facebook, and the office has an active Facebook page. We applaud the agency's effort to improve its outreach to the public, and we encourage our readers and residents to take advantage of the NWS Guam team's open lines of communication. They want to hear more from the public about ways to improve their communication. Connect with them at facebook.com NWS Guam. And it is a great service.
Yeah, did you read the article that had the interview with Brandon and Landon?
The brothers? No.
Yeah, that was on like page 3. And it's a good article. However, I'm not quite sure how they're going to make the leap. It's one thing, I just go to their website, which is the official extension of the national website, but it's specific to Guam. I get all my information there because I'm looking at it. But I've seen just in the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks we've had 3 warnings for up to 6 inches of rain and flood warnings that were very specific. And even one of them with a header that said EAS activation requested.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and I've had this discussion with Bob Kelly before about how what's the tie-in? Can they activate automatically?
They're not the ones, though, right?
They can be. There are entities that can activate.
Just so everybody who's listening understands, because you're not talking full shop, you're talking half shop here. EAS used to be called EBS.
Well, it's radio specific.
Emergency Broadcast System. Now it's Emergency Announcement System.
We get it. We get.
Just explain to people what.
That's right. But everyone who watches broadcast media, okay, and not just waits for their phone to ring because somebody's calling them on Facebook. I don't know how often that happens, but if you're watching TV or you're listening to radio, all broadcast stations have equipment that's required to issue amber alerts, tornado warnings, tsunami warnings, flood advisory, flood alerts. When we're getting, like, one area of the island's getting dumped with like 3 inches of rain in an hour, all of those are supposed to roll out automatically. And as someone in the industry, in the broadcast industry, we've been struggling not to deliver the service, but for the people who have the power to hit the button and initiate it, to do so. Because we do get the required weekly and monthly tests.
Tests, yes.
And you see them sometimes on TV. You'll hear them sometimes on the radio. Well, they're supposed to work, and there's a hesitancy to alert the public. And, you know, I appreciate what the brothers are doing up there at National Weather Service, but Facebook doesn't ring your phone like a telephone.
But I tell you, though, and you said you've been off for a while, though, what I find interesting about Facebook is that people go to it whenever they see something, and they go to it rather than, I'm not saying they don't turn on the radio when there's an emergency, because I used to live in the south of the United States, and whenever there was inclement weather, we automatically turned the radio on. There's even a channel, I think it's here also, there's a weather band that constantly gives the weather.
Yes.
But I don't know how often that updates.
And that's one of the things that the brothers need to hear.
Yeah.
Because if they talk to 100 people and 95 of them, percent of them say, I only listen to the radio in my car.
Right.
And they look at their Facebook, 5 times a day, well, then they're going to have a skew. And it doesn't, and maybe an accurate skew, which is fine. But they have multiple platforms to be on. And they have people full-time who can alert us, and that's a good thing. But the technologies are for the public.
And the good thing about them, and if you listen to the Ray Gibson show, and I'm sure other stations have access to these two brothers, they're very amiable. They would love to come on the air, and they love to explain what's going on. Because the first thing when there's something going on, Ray said, get a hold of them. Get a hold of one of the brothers. Get a hold of them, and they'll come on and explain what's happening. Because sometimes we just don't understand, and we really want to get the gist of it. But yeah, I want to commend them for that. But as an editorial, I'm just like ho hum. That could have just been the article, like you said.
They just did the article. They just covered the article, and they didn't cover what really is the meat of it, which is tsunami warnings. We get earthquakes all the time.
Yeah.
But which earthquakes are going to give us a tsunami. And that's like 45 minutes,
True. Yeah.
20 minutes, of warning.
Yeah.
And
but that's I would love to bring that up another time because and I always look at it from a point of view of really
it should have been in the editorials, my point.
Yeah. And that's the thing about the editorials these days, and which is why Bob has been he hasn't even been stingy with the Blue Stars. He just hasn't had a need to give them out, and that's one of the reasons why it feels more like public service announcements instead of editorials. Let's move on to the card, though, because then I'll put in the red meat stuff. Okay. Just real quick, for those of you who just tuned in, this is Tall Tales on 93.3 FM, not the National Weather Service. I don't have an update on the weather, even though I can look outside and see the sun is still out. It is 4:16. We're going to the card. Of course, we have number 1, Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. Paul Zerzan says red rice is really orange. And then the rest of everybody else says, how dare you? The rice is red and will always be red. And it's our indigenous tradition that it's always going to be red. No. But it's not about the rice. It's not even about Paul Zerzan. It's about the narrative. Everybody knows what is. You know what you know. And if anybody says something different from the narrative, everyone's up in arms, no matter what it is. And we've seen plenty of examples, and we'll continue to give examples in these articles that we read. I do a little bit of it tongue-in-cheek, but it's important to understand what's going on and to fully flesh out everything that's coming to us for the media. Today I have an example of 2 different perspectives from 2 different editorials. One's more of an article, but you can see the perspective from there, and I think it's very interesting. We have Public Law 3634, and all I have to say is great news out of GVB. They had an article in the paper about Governor Gutierrez's visit to the Pacific Island Fair. I think that's what it's called, PIFA, Festival of the Pacific Islands. So anyways, in San Diego, but they continue to be a little bit anemic in their agendas that they publish in the paper. The Guam Visitors Bureau will hold a Taiwan market update meeting on Thursday, October 6th at 11 a.m. And the agenda, number 5, new business, and it's blank. There is nothing there. Do we know anything else that's going to be discussed? And we heard how the attorney for GVB, I forget his name, Daryl, if you can remind me, because you have the better memory than I do, who said that one of the issues that GVB has to do is tighten up their meeting agendas and the way they announce it and the way that things are announced as well.
The general manager, which is Carl Gutierrez.
Was it Carl Gutierrez who said that? Well,
yeah, because he was after.
Yeah. So this is important. Yeah,
board's agenda.
Well, he was talking about those secret over coffee meetings. Yeah.
That was part of that was what he was talking about.
Right.
Is that you have to have proper notice, but he's not on the board. He's the chief administrator.
Yes.
So,
but this affects all of GVB, whether it's the board or not. Whatever decision's been made at a board meeting or these little meetings here, Taiwan market meetings, they have a potential for being nullified because they're not following Public Law 3634.
And the crux of the issue that was that tiff that was going on, and I think it still continues, is that the board issues its notices, and the administration is going, but at least let us look at it so that we don't have to go back and clean up your mess later on.
True, but that's it starts with transparency and just follow 3634.
Well, 3634 is the requirement, the update to the Open Government Act that requires online Zoom meetings. But the Open Government Law is the one that
it's detailed meetings, and I have the law here. It has to say detailed agendas. It says it in the law, but for what it is, this is what it is. They don't have the agenda on there. They don't have it properly put on place, and that's what we look for when we're going through the announcements. Is what is in the announcements, what is in the agendas. Are they template agendas, or do they have the points that they're going to talk about specifically and clearly in the agendas? Pretty much. Yes?
No. That was in the open government law. 3634 added.
We'll
Zoom
talk after
meetings.
this program then, Daryl. And we'll clear it up. Because I don't think the kids want mom and dad fighting. Anyways, let's go on to the next thing. Gun control versus gun America. United States versus China. I have Prutehi Letekin versus Authority. And I just put that article in there just so I can have a dig at them and make today's title, which is Tadinko Gatewood tells Prutehi Letekin, you have no say. Boom, boom. And then we have Republicans versus infinite executive power. This next one could be a little dicey because I understand it might not be a popular perspective, but I have here addiction versus accountability. The next one we have a leftovers called pro-abortionists versus choice. We have free speech. Rename this one free speech or Ellenson versus the red speech. And then the FBI versus innocent, helpless humans. So, gun control in tough spots, in increasingly well-armed America. And this is a very interesting article because it's an analysis, they call it. The dream of a gun-free America has never been more ephemeral, can't pronounce words right now. While calls for gun control still abound, their effectiveness is thrown into question by the reality of gun ownership, and the disconnect seems to be growing. Polls suggest the majority of Americans don't own a gun and support stricter gun laws. Gun ownership has stagnated for decades, according to Gallup. In reality, however, gun sales have been breaking records in recent years, with a significant portion going to new gun owners, according to industry estimates. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden's expansive gun control agenda boiled down to a single piece of legislation so far that expanded background checks and offered grants for state red flag laws, but didn't go as far as banning any particular weapon. On the legal front, the Supreme Court in June tossed some concealed carry restrictions in New York, de facto green lighting challenges to similar statutes in other states. Any proposition to actually disarm Americans is just a pipe dream, said Thomas Hogan, an adjunct fellow at the conservative Manhattan Institute and former federal prosecutor. The gun control argument points that if gun ownership is restricted, it will be more difficult for a bad actor to obtain a firearm, and gun crime would thus decrease. A common counter-argument is that areas with some of the strictest gun laws, such as New York City, Chicago, or Philadelphia, suffer much more gun crime than many areas with less stringent gun laws. Proponents of gun control usually retort that the strict laws are neutered by the fact that criminals can obtain guns in a neighboring state with looser laws. However, criminals seldom buy their guns legally. A 2016 government survey of prison inmates showed only about 9% went to a gun store or a pawn shop to buy the firearm they carried while committing their crime. Less than 1% got it at a gun show, and almost 43% said they found it or got it online or from a private person, such as a relative or a friend. 6% said they stole it. Simply making it harder to legally get a gun does little because the citizenry is already armed to the teeth, Hogan pointed out. In his view, the ship on making guns scarce has sailed and was, in fact, never moored to begin with. The first mass-produced item in the United States was a Samuel Colt revolver, he told the Epoch Times. Gun control activists give the example of Australia, which substantially disarmed its population through a mandatory gun buyback campaign. But Americans are armed on a different scale. For more than a decade, the country has had more guns than people, and the ratio keeps increasing. Gun sales especially exploded in 2020 and 2021, coinciding with the rise in violent crime. Over those 2 years, gun owner ranks have grown by nearly 14 million. estimated the National Shooting Sports Foundation, an industry group. Even among Democrats, about 1 in 9 got a gun in 2020, an Epoch Times big data poll found. America has never been at that point where gun confiscation would have been feasible, Hogan said. Out of the 350 to 400 million firearms in the United States, how many would be handed in, he asked. All the lawful gun owners would hand their guns in, but the criminals would not. He estimated it would take hundreds of years to disarm Americans, in no small part because firearms don't easily deteriorate. You can take your guns, you can bury them in the backyard, and 50 years later, you can dig them up, and with a cleaning kit, a very basic cleaning kit, inside of about 5 minutes, you could have your firearms working just fine, he said. The gun control proponents primarily target sporting rifles, particularly the AR-15, which they argue was designed to kill people in wars and has no legitimate use in civilian hands. Critics have countered this argument on several levels. It's true that AR-15, the R stands for Armalite, the original designer, was developed for military use. Its civilian semi-automatic version, however, has become one of the most versatile rifle platforms and the most popular sporting rifle in the United States, with about 20 million in circulation, according to the NSSF. Despite their proliferation, rifles are used in only about 1% of violent crimes in the United States, while about 1 in 5 involves a handgun, according to 2020 crime data submitted to the FBI by about half of the country's police agencies. For obvious reasons, a criminal's favorite gun is a small, easy-to-conceal pistol, Hogan said. The AR-15 has been sometimes portrayed as high-powered and particularly deadly, and other times not powerful enough to be useful for hunting, and neither argument is quite right. Most shootings, even mass shootings, occur at a close range where the advantages of an AR-15 over a handgun, accuracy and bullet velocity, diminish, while the disadvantageous bulk and weight become more prominent. The rifle was used in a significant share of high-profile mass shootings, but there is little evidence the shooters picked it because it was the deadliest weapon. In fact, there are much more deadlier rifles than the AR-15 available on the market, and we read that yesterday, or was it yesterday or this week, about the top 5 rifles with more velocity than the AR-15. The hunting argument, on the other hand, is outdated. The AR-15 was originally designed to accept the military use 5.56 ball ammunition, which is indeed unsuitable for hunting. Advances in ammunition technology, however, has enabled the development of many rounds that made the rifle popular among hunters of small and mid-sized game, particularly hogs. Then there's a constitutional argument. The Second Amendment states a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You've all heard it here before at the beginning of every show. Proponents of gun control, even some Supreme Court justices, have interpreted the amendment to allow extensive restrictions on gun ownership. They argue that it only protected the right to bear arms for organized state militias, which are transformed into the National Guard after the Civil War. Second Amendment advocates, on the other hand, say that most of the current restrictions should be nixed. They point out that if the right to bear arms is underpinned by the need to draw a militia from the populace, in no small part to deter the government from becoming tyrannical, then the populace needs to be free to hold firearms. And the Supreme Court ruled in the District of Columbia versus Heller in 2008 and reiterated in McDonald versus Chicago in 2010 that the Second Amendment also protects the right to bear arms for self-defense. Various parts of gun laws have been constantly pushed in one or the other direction over the past few decades, with Democrat-leaning states adding more restrictions and Republican-leaning states removing some. The Supreme Court, holding a 6-3 conservative majority earlier this year, dealt a blow to gun control proponents as it struck down a New York state law that made it hard to get a permit to carry a firearm outside of one's home. The opinion has opened the door to challenging similar laws, such as those banning gun possession in, quote, sensitive places. Thus, unless the legal landscape changes dramatically, Americans are unlikely to lose their guns anytime soon. And that is the state of gun control and gun ownership in the United States. Again, whatever people's opinions are on guns, firearms, it all comes down to the Second Amendment. And I think that's where it has to reside. Let's take a break, Daryl, and we'll be right back with Tall Tales right after this.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Train every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Does your physical workplace have an impact on the mental outlook of workers, their overall job satisfaction, and their productivity? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll talk about that and what you might want to do about it. It's The Extra Point here on 93.3.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point by Jerry Roberts at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point.
Shop and Win is back at Micronesia Mall. Beginning August 6th, shop and redeem receipts for a chance to win instant prizes from Burger King or Foot Locker, or receive a grand prize entry form for our first raffle drawing on November 12th for your chance to win a 2022 Toyota Corolla LE courtesy of Atkins Scroll Toyota. Plus, 10 lucky runners-up will receive a $250 gift certificate from Goodwin Travel and Tour for tickets for Philippine Airlines.
Shop more, win more.
Only at Micronesia Mall. Terms and conditions apply.
And now, back to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the one radio show politicians don't want you to listen to. Call now, 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
And we are back. It is 4:32. You're listening to Tall Tales on 93.3 FM. KUSG, The Point. My name is Jose Martinez, and I am sitting in for Bob Klitzkie, who is on a well-deserved sabbatical, probably soaking up some sun on some sandy beach in a tropical place. Oh, wait, no, that's
Florida.
Home. That's home. He's probably in some brisk, cold, snowy, desolate area. No.
Not in September.
Not in September. He went to the Arctic. So I kind of alluded to a two article perspective. The first one's really short. It's an editorial from the Wall Street Journal, but a lot of people know that there is a summit going on this week, the U.S. and Pacific Islands Country Summit. It's interesting because I just saw an article in the Pacific Island Times that the headline took me by surprise, but it says here, the Pacific Island Times has a headline that says, "Shunned for many years, Pacific Islands are now drenched in U.S. attention." And it got my attention. The Wall Street Journal has an editorial that says, "America's Pacific Island comeback. In attention, let China steal a march, but the U.S. is trying harder." No kidding, huh?
Well, that's a phrase that's attached to being number two.
Right. That's funny. And in some instances, it kind of feels that way. Only in the Solomon, though. Well, this one is a little bit about the Solomon Islands. It is about a lot about the Solomon Islands. Excuse me. It's that thing again. So this one from the Wall Street Journal, America's Pacific Island comeback. Most Americans know about the nations in the vast South and Western Pacific, mainly from the island-hopping battles of World War II. The countries are still crucial to America's defense, and so the Biden administration's U.S. Pacific Islands Country Summit this week is a welcome event. The key is convincing Pacific leaders that the U.S. is there to stay. U.S. inattention to the region has already let China make inroads in the Solomon Islands, where Prime Minister Manasseh Sogarve signed a security agreement with Beijing in April. At the time, Mr. Sogarve took umbrage at critics of the Chinese involvement, remarking that his country will welcome any country that is willing to support us in our security space. But in August, Solomons refused to let a U.S. Coast Guard cutter make a port call. Mr. Stogarvey is attending this week's summit, though he told other Pacific Islands that he wouldn't sign a joint U.S. Pacific Islands declaration with the Biden administration. That makes better U.S. relations with other countries all the more important. Opening U.S. embassies and trading opportunities will help. Pacific Islands are concerned about overfishing that is depleting global fishing stocks, as well as rising sea levels. Education and health initiatives would also be valuable for many of the islands still struggling with economies damaged by the COVID-19 pandemic. In particular, the U.S. can do more to help the Marshall Islands clean up the site where the U.S. tested nuclear weapons in the 1940s and 1950s. The U.S. has cleaned up contaminated materials, but radioactive soil and waste is now contained in the Marshall Islands Runit Dome, where islanders say rising water levels pose the risk of cracks or leaks. The U.S. originally set up a $150 million fund to pay for cleanup costs, but there is room for further help with remediation. Australia also has a vital national interest in the region off its northern coast that it doesn't want to see dominated by China. The Biden administration's AUKUS deal to provide nuclear submarines to Australia was a demonstration of the U.S. commitment to the region, and the Aussies are an important partner in courting Pacific allies. Since World War II, the U.S. has thought of the Pacific as a relatively safe and stable region for U.S. interests, but that is changing with China's ambitions. The Biden administration's summit sends an important signal that the U.S. is paying attention to the region again, and this should be a bipartisan effort no matter which party controls the White House. That's an editorial board piece right there, which I thought was an interesting take. Ready for the Pacific Island Times version? It's actually pretty good, too.
What was the last one?
Wall Street Journal.
Okay.
Shunned for many years, Pacific Islands are now drenched in U.S. attention. The Pacific Islands nation will have the full attention of U.S. President Joe Biden, who will host the regional leaders' two-day gathering in Washington this week. It's billed as the first ever high-level meeting between the U.S. and island leaders. The Pacific Island Country Summit will reflect the United States broadening and deepening cooperation on key issues affecting the region, according to a statement from Press Secretary, is it Karen or Karine? I only hear Jean Perry. Yeah. Slated for September 28 and 29, the summit will tackle climate change, pandemic response, economic recovery, quite a few things on the list that we've heard already. Here, and advancing a free and open Indo-Pacific. And Biden's hosting of the summit marks Washington's tuned-up public relations campaign to win a region that is increasingly being courted by China. Topping the summit agenda is the 2050 strategy for the Blue Continent, which drafters defined as a reinforcement of commitment and working together as a collective for advancing Pacific regionalism based on the Pacific narrative. At the conclusion of the 12th Pacific Islands Conference of Leaders meeting 2 weeks ago, Pacific leaders endorsed the 2050 strategy for the Blue Continent, agreeing to stand as a unified bloc to deal with regional issues collectively and guard their sovereignty. And you remember that we had attended, I think we sent Josh Tenorio and a couple other people, even though we're not a part of that.
Yeah, you have affiliated nations, and then you have them in a block with unaffiliated nations.
Right, but it was interesting that the U.S. and Guam was there as well. Over the last 3 years, high-ranking Washington officials, including U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, have visited the region amid Beijing's success in building diplomatic ties with island states such as Kiribati and the Solomon Islands. In July, Vice President Kamala Harris addressed the Pacific Islands Forum, announcing Washington's plans to expand U.S. presence in the region by opening more embassies, reviving dormant programs such as the Peace Corps mission, and extending more economic assistance to island nations. Did we go over the request from the president of FSM asking for a Peace Corps to return?
I remember reading it, but I'm not sure we went over
I
it
haven't.
here.
I thought that was interesting, too, because I didn't know that they had left just a couple of years ago. I thought they left a while ago. But I'm not sure exactly if the Peace Corps is the right entity for these times, but it's
It was the request.
It was a request, right?
Yeah,
but,
send us back the Peace Corps. This is
Right.
the level of assistance we want.
But I'm talking about the Peace Corps as a whole. But that's let's tackle that another day, because I know a couple of people who served in the Peace Corps at that time, and I know that their mindsets are a little different today than they were back then when they were kids in the 60s.
Well, it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't send the veterans. You would send out new people who.
Well, of course, but I'm just talking about the mindset of the Peace Corps then, as opposed to I'm not sure what the mission is these days, but it might be a little different. At the 12 Pacific Islands Conference of Leaders meeting in mid-September, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy R. Sherman presented a long list of programs and funding assistance that Washington has extended to the region. The U.S. Institute of Peace noted that the Pacific Island region also played prominently in the White House February 2022 Indo-Pacific Strategy, which stated that the United States would seek to be an indispensable partner to Pacific Island nations. U.S. interest in the Pacific Islands is growing because of concerns about China's regional ambitions, including its efforts to get Taiwan's diplomatic partners to switch recognition, as the Solomon Islands and Kiribati both did in 2019, and its endeavors to establish a military presence in the region. That's going to be interesting, because I believe Palau has asked for a great deal of military presence on the island there, U.S. military presence. Earlier this year, the Solomon Islands signed a secretive security agreement with China that could lay the groundwork for a Chinese military facility in the strategically located archipelago. However, the USIP said the U.S. has fundamental interests in the Pacific Islands regardless of China's engagement. The United States is a Pacific nation with territories in the region, including the state of Hawaii, American Samoa, the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands, and Guam, USIP said, and the Washington Summit will be the first U.S. Pacific Island meeting with a full plate. Boom, boom. In May 2019, then President Donald Trump hosted the leaders of freely associated states, David Panuelo of the Federated States of Micronesia, Hilda Heine of the Marshall Islands, and Tommy Remengesau of Palau at the White House. It was a brief meeting, but White House officials branded it as a historic and symbolic demonstration of the U.S. support for the Pacific. And here's our local interjection. Lieutenant Governor Josh Tenorio noted that the U.S. territory has historically served as the grounds for geopolitical action and as a critical driver of regional diplomacy. Governor Lilian Guerrero is attending the summit as part of the U.S. delegation. We look forward to leveraging these enduring ties to secure substantive and long-term benefits of Guam and the Pacific community, Tenorio said. Our administration has welcomed President Biden's initiatives for more effective and efficient cooperation and support of Pacific Island priorities. As the leader of progressive advancement in the Western Pacific, Guam stands ready to further build climate change resiliency, enhance natural resource management and renewable energy growth, support the Compacts of Free Association, and foster sustainable economic development. I'm giggling here because I like he has this list of things, and then support the Compacts of Free Association, which I think is kind of I understand why he included in that list, but it seems a little bit more specific than the other things that are stated in this. The other things I think are just more of
I think each of those
platforms.
that he listed have actual offices that are ongoing, like sustainability at UOG, you go down through the list. There are specific offices for each of those already set up.
Yeah. That's I mean, like with all places, but that we have this general. To me, it's kind of like a generalized list, and then the support of Compacts of Free Association, because right now the negotiations are still going on, and I don't think we're at the table. We might be at the kids' table observing, but I'm not sure how much input we have right now.
Well, if we didn't support it, what difference would it make? We might not get any money.
Okay. Let's go to a real quick break. You listen to Tall Tales on KUSG 93.3 FM. Don't go away.
It's back. Sunday, October 2nd, the Guam Army National Guard presents the GSPN Imas Metgood Strongman Competition. Come to the Paseo grounds and find out who will be the 2022 Strongest Man and Strongest Woman. Can Big Tonsalas and Brittany Pareda defend their titles? Watch the strongest on island take on the Pacific Unlimited Outrigger Lift, the Pacific Tire CTV Tire Flip, ITNE's Pro Pull, the Michelob Ultra Keg Toss, and Paradise Fitness's Tombstone Walk. And you got to be there for the Triple J Truck Pull. Food and drinks will be on sale. All proceeds going to the Tasa Canoe Builders. The GSPN Imas Metgood Competition, Sunday, October 2nd, starting at noon. Special thanks to the stations of Choice Broadcasting. That's Boss 104, Star 101, and The Point.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
And we are back. Tall Tales. My name is Jose Martinez. I'm trying my best to hydrate my throat right now. This is, I think, day 5 of a voice that's trying to leave me. But we will endure. Again, I mainly pulled out this article because it doesn't, I mean, I think it's pretty significant what the ruling was of Chief Justice or Chief Judge Francis Tadinko Gatewood of the lawsuit filed against the lawsuit of Pratehi Latekin filed against the Department of Defense. But it was just an opportunity for me to make a cheap joke. But I think what is interesting is that it puts the Guam EPA in the spotlight now, and what's going to be done about these burn pits. And I have kind of a mixed opinion on them because when I think of burn pits, I think of some like you talked about yesterday, Daryl. Some of the neighbors in our villages who like to conduct their own burn pits in their backyards.
There are burn pits and there are burn pits.
Yeah. This one is probably a little bit more on an industrial level. But this article, I think, came from the Post. And, you know, every news agency here on Guam did a take on it, but I thought the Post did a really good description and balance of this story. The military's open burning application proceeds with dismissal of lawsuit. Pratehi Latekin's lawsuit filed against the DOD and U.S. Air Force over their use of burning and detonations at Taragi Beach was dismissed in the District Court of Guam. Chief Judge Francis Tadinko Gatewood granted the military's request to dismiss the lawsuit, stating the Guam Environmental Protection Agency should be deciding whether the Air Force can continue to use Taragi Beach for open burning and open detonation of hazardous waste munitions. Pratehi Latekin filed the suit on the grounds that the Air Force had failed to comply with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, a federal law within Tadinko Gatewood's jurisdiction. Military counsel Matthew Rand argued in court Wednesday that the lawsuit, which stemmed from the Air Force's application to continue using Taragi Beach in 2021, should not be resolved at a federal level. Rand further explained Guam's EPA has yet to make a decision on their application for renewal, which is valid for 3 years. The plaintiff does not respect Congress's process that includes the experience, knowledge, and expertise of Guam EPA, Rand said. The plaintiff tries to muddy the waters about the action that is challenged in the complaint. In response, Pratehi Latekin's counsel, David Henkin, said in order for the Air Force to resubmit their application to use Taragi Beach, they need to comply with NEPA. According to the complaint, NEPA is in place to make agencies consider the harm their projects cause to the government and seek alternative ways of disposing of their weapons. By reapplying for the permit, which expired in 2021, Henkin said it triggered legal consequences the Air Force should be facing, even if Guam EPA has yet to make a decision on the application for permitted burning and detonation in the open air. The Air Force has also continued operations at the site despite a decision not being made yet. The absence of that decision and the absence of the next steps to implement that decision, which is submitting the application, they would have had to cease open burn and open detonation in September, Henkin explained. Tadinko Gatewood, however, was concerned that Pratehi Latekin did not explain why NEPA should apply to the Air Force's application. She and Henkin went back and forth on the issue, which ultimately ended with Tadinko Gatewood siding with the Air Force and allowing Guam EPA to decide on the permit before the issue could be brought to the federal court. I do believe that the ball is in Guam's EPA's court, if you will, the judge said. I do think it's up to Guam EPA to make a decision one way or another, and then things can unravel if they have to unravel, alluding to a more appropriate time to request legal action from the district court. The Guam Daily Post reached out to Guam EPA 2 weeks ago on the status of the review of the permit, and the agency has yet to respond. Earth Justice, which is a firm working with Pratehi Latekin in the lawsuit 2 weeks ago, wrote a letter to Guam EPA asking them to deny the permit application. The U.S. EPA has long recognized the dangers of open burning and open detonation, banning the practice in 1980 and carving out only a narrow exception for waste explosives, which cannot safely be disposed of through other modes of treatment, the letter said. The letter stated. Did I get the rest of this? No, that's it. That was all the article. Yeah, I'm not sure how close these are to what we've heard about that happened in the Middle East, or what they're calling burn pits, where they were dumping not just munitions waste, but human waste, not bodies, but like sewage waste. They're burning lots of other things. And I know there's quite a few veterans that have come back with injuries and conditions and illnesses due to, or they claim due to these burn pits.
Well, the burn pits in the Middle East had to do with burning of military hardware that contains things that when you burn them, they get released in the air and then you breathe them in.
Right.
And they are things that harden tips of bullets and do various kinds of lethal harm when used as intended. But and then of course this same generation, we're not talking about World War II munitions, we're talking about current munitions. And yes, if they can't be moved, then they've got to have some place to dispose of them. Probably better at Taragi than over at Retidian, but that's downwind of the Taragi area. And that Taragi area actually is big enough to have held the firing range, except for the activity at the Air Force Base up above, but there were firing ranges.
There's a
already
couple
down
of
there.
them there,
Yeah,
I remember seeing them.
But those are areas that have been long used for the disposal of
well, that's what makes this interesting, because I'm certain that they've been doing this for years, not just recently. The lawsuit is interesting, and how much of this has to do with just not wanting the military there at all. I mean, Taragi is part of the base long time, but it's not like it's Retidian or the closing of a lot of places that have been open to the public before.
But they still need the permit to be renewed every 3 years.
Right.
And that's subject to review. And Guam EPA hasn't moved on it. And so it gives an opportunity for this local entity plus a
Plus the national
entity,
entities, right?
one that has successfully challenged the military in a number of areas throughout the United States.
Again, there is an environmental factor involved, but there also is a huge anti-military factor involved. But it's not to say that this doesn't have merit to it. I am interested in knowing more about what is the dangers, what the permit is supposed to be about, what are the requirements of the permit, and is there any change from what they've been doing before, previously years with a permit as opposed to now? Is it just a matter of a permit? Right? Because if it's just a matter of a permit, what's different?
But you're not going to get the kind of detail that you're asking about because it has to do with the chemical composition of the things that are being disposed of that can't be transported down Marine Drive and put on a ship at Big Navy.
Right. And that's the Gatewood channeling her inner Governor Lilian Guerrero. You have no say. She doesn't have a say either. She says the Guam EPA has the say. What say you? The lines are open, 671-825.
So if you don't die, you'll live.
There you go. I've already forgotten our phone number here, Daryl. 671. Okay, now I got to look it up. Doofus Jose. Okay.
888-8255.
There you go, 888. I've been
8255.
I've been spouting the WhatsApp number because it's 797-8255. So 888-8255. If you have commentary or even some knowledge of what goes on in this burning or munitions dumps, there's another thing that I want to delve into, and I've read about it in other places. I grew up as a military brat and been around bases that have, of course, firing range and things like that. Even in Hawaii, I remember hiking as a Boy Scout, going to these places that were used for practicing, and there were shells everywhere. But I've heard that even those places where there's shells everywhere, there has to be some sort of cleanup containment or something, right?
Well, this whole island was cleaned up after the war, so they walked side by side and picked up everything that was visible. But with the rains and erosion, there's still
things probably sinking deeper in.
No, actually surfacing.
Oh, that's even okay. That sounds fun. You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. We'll be right back.
Yeah, don't
after
call
the big,
yet.
after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
This is a Fox News alert. Waiting for first light to see Ian's wrath. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.
That was my house. My house is gone.
That woman near Fort Myers says her home and her grandparents were leveled by Ian's 150-mile-an-hour winds. A storm surge of 12 feet or more swamping the barrier islands of southwest Florida and trapping some people in their homes. Florida's Emergency Management Director Kevin Guthrie says where conditions permit, recovery efforts are beginning.
We have
42,000 restoration personnel. We literally have, with first responders across the state and additional ones coming in, there's well over 10,000 responders statewide ready to do stuff.
The storm now moving across central Florida.
Ian is weakening. It is no longer a major hurricane, and that simply means the winds have lessened, but they're still powerful enough to snap trees and snag power lines and send cell phone towers crashing down. And there is still the rain. Ian is carrying a lot of moisture, and it will be spilling as much as 2 feet of rain in some places of central Florida, which is already saturated at this time of year. Emergency managers say this amplifies risks of floods, river swelling, and roadway damage.
Fox's Evan Brown. The National Weather Service says torrential rains will likely cause flash flooding in central Florida and cross the state's east coast, potentially strengthening over the Atlantic before making another landfall along the Georgia or South Carolina coastline on Friday. Vice President Kamala Harris has visited the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea, nearing the end of her 4-day Asian trip, which included the state funeral for Japan's former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, who was assassinated in July. Move over Roger Maris, the Yankee slugger's single-season home run record has been tied by another Yankee. Aaron Judge hit his 61st home run Wednesday night in Toronto. He has a chance to break the record at Yankee Stadium this weekend. America is listening to Fox News.
Gas is expensive, so let the bank come to you. Through our remote deposit capture, you can deposit your checks into your account from your phone. And with our Dynamite Bank Pacific Visa debit card, you can use your money anytime, anywhere. It's the perfect combo.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Equal housing lender. Member FDIC. Crank it up.
Happy day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title. A power of attorney can be a useful tool in a real estate transaction, but if abused, it can result in devastating loss. Choosing your representative should be done with the utmost care and should be very specific about the powers being granted. To mitigate loss, the team at Security Title confirms with the owner prior to using a power of attorney to sell the property. Each transaction is unique. Let the professionals at Security Title use our experience to facilitate a secure closing. We are here to help.
Recapping this hour's Fox News alert, first responders beginning rescue efforts in those areas of Florida where conditions permit. Hurricane Ian now moving across central Florida, bringing tropical storm force winds and heavy rains. The White House says Hurricane Ian should not result in higher gas prices for most of the country.
Additionally, we know that disruptions from hurricanes can pose challenges to markets, but the latest projections show that major refineries should not be impacted by Hurricane Ian. As the president said today, oil and gas companies should not use this moment as an excuse to raise gas prices.
Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House acknowledges supply and demand factors will lead to higher prices in local areas impacted by the storm. The storm is disrupting air travel in the United States. Several airports in Florida closed. FlightAware.com reporting more than 3,200 U.S. flight cancellations. A border smuggling air operation has been busted in Texas.
Most migrants coming to the U.S. are doing so by foot or by vehicle, but Homeland Security reports a trio of accused human smugglers attempted to circumvent the border altogether and just fly over it. 3 people are now charged in Texas with chartering a Beechcraft airplane and dropping 6 migrants off in the nation's interior. The Salvadorian nationals say they were held at a stash house south of the border before being boarded onto a plane and flown into the U.S. Tom Graham, Fox News.
Coolio, the rapper who was among hip-hop's biggest names in the 1990s, with hits including Fantastic Voyage, has died. His manager says that Coolio, whose legal name was artist Leon Ivey Jr., died at the Los Angeles home of a friend on Wednesday. The cause was not immediately clear. Coolio was 59. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
It's back. Sunday, October 2nd, the Guam Army National Guard presents the GSPN Imas Metgood Strongman Competition. Come to the Paseo grounds and find out who will be the 2022 Strongest Man and Strongest Woman. Can Big Tonsalas and Brittany Pareda defend their titles? Watch the strongest on island take on the Pacific Unlimited Outrigger Lift, the Pacific Tire CTE Tire Flip, IT&E's Pro Pull, the Michelob Ultra Keg Toss, and Paradise Fitness's Tombstone Walk. And you got to be there for the Triple J Truck Pull. Food and drinks will be on sale. All proceeds going to the Tasa Canoe Builders. The GSPN Imas Metgood Competition, Sunday, October 2nd, starting at noon. Special thanks to the stations of choice broadcasting. That's Boss 104, Star 101, and The Point.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarte Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
The big halftime show that indicates we are on part 2 of Tall Tales today. It is Thursday. Only one more day until we have another weekend. Another 2 days without Tall Tales. But rest assured we'll be back on Monday. I hope not to repeat the weekend.
And a weekend without a 4 to 6 inches of rain warning.
I hope so.
Well, we had a couple of those and didn't get the rain.
No. So maybe we'll get it this time. I don't know. But, yeah, there's a couple of things that are going on this weekend that marks the first of, because this is the end of September.
The end of the year, fiscal year.
Only have one more day left till the end of the month. If you were watching on Facebook or YouTube, you were watching also on the screen the Rogues Gallery. And what makes all the people connected in that Rogues Gallery, they're all beautiful people. And they're wearing their I'm a Tailgater t-shirt, which you can get by going to thepoint.gu, clicking on the link that has my beard and myself also wearing the t-shirt. Or you can just click on the link on Facebook. I provided it there for you. It is a local business which will print the t-shirt to order, mail it out to you. You can grab your shirt, put it on, take a selfie, and send it to the Points WhatsApp at 671-797-8255. And you too can be included in our big halftime show Rogues Gallery. Go to thepoint.gu or on facebook.com to the review or the replay of the show right now, and the link is there. Now, the next thing on the card here, what did I do with the card? I'm losing everything.
It's on the card.
Yeah. The next thing on the card I have is is addicts versus accountability or responsibility or addiction. And I recognize this as something that could trigger some people because I'm going to talk about things that might not be popular, but I want to read the letter to the editor. I'm trying to remember the name of the person who wrote this. I don't have it here. Let me look in this. It was in the Pacific Daily News. I want to give the name to her. Her name is Callan Perez. 2 L's and 1 E, so I'm assuming it's Callan and not Colleen Perez. Addicts are human beings just like you and me. Addiction is a tricky and heavy issue. When dealing with individuals with substance use disorder, it's important to treat them with respect, dignity, and to use the most updated disease model of addiction that is used by treatment providers nationwide. However, when witnessing the systemic symptoms of this issue in our community, crime, theft, neglected children, and other responsibilities, compassion does not come easy. I get that, and I'm a former user. Sometimes even I struggle with compassion, but the fact is that treatment works and every addicted person deserves recovery. Addicts are human beings, just like you and me. Understanding can make them healthy, and overwhelmingly, punishment can make addicts sicker. Addiction touches every corner of our island, echoing this year's theme for National Recovery Month. Recovery is for everyone, every person, every family, every community. There have been numerous opportunities for Guam to have a peek into the treatment aspect of substance use disorders via open houses held at our various treatment centers, and I was so pleased to see Attorney General Levin Camacho at these events. Drug users can be wary of law enforcement, so I can't emphasize enough how impactful it is to have an Attorney General who is clearly invested in the treatment aspect of substance use disorders. Instead of just viewing all addicts as criminals who deserve to be locked up and never recovered, he is compassionate enough to invest the time, effort, and resources into making these members of our community better, safer, and happier. When you think about what kind of community leaders you want for our island, I urge you to consider how these potential leaders view our island's most vulnerable populations, especially as an island currently ravaged by drug addiction. The war on drugs is being fought every day by addicts, whose battle is between the rational part of their brain and the impulse control part, broken from repeat flooding by artificial dopamine. The war will not be won by locking them up, but by creating pathways for treatment of substance use disorders. I am blessed to work in treatment because most people who work in treatment are recovering addicts themselves. They continue to help our island not just by staying abstinent, but by helping other addicts start new lives and choose different paths. The empathetic framework of treatment described by the disease model of addiction is the most hopeful way for our community to move forward against the meth epidemic that is sweeping our island. The question is, which AG candidate has this compassionate view towards addicts and would be the best choice for us to achieve a more harmonious, happy, and healthy island home? Okay, and so the title of that letter, and I know that usually the writers of these columns and letters don't create the titles. It says, addicts are human beings just like you and me. I am not disputing the call for compassion in this letter at all, and I completely agree with that part of it. But if ever there was a letter that was more of a campaign ad than it was a letter calling for compassion, and that I think that's something to make note of, is it kind of got buried. The whole point of compassion for people who are suffering from addiction. Again, not to say that the points of calling for treatment and compassion are wrong, but I understand this is campaign season. It's going to get repeated over and over again. But letters like this doesn't help when you add that campaign element into it. And maybe I'm overreaching or overreading into this, but it was plain as day who this letter was really for. Number two, those who are addicted to drugs are human beings just as those who are addicted to other vices that allow them to commit crimes, sometimes violent crimes, sometimes crimes against themselves that harm themselves and harm their family members. Again, I don't take away the compassion aspect of anybody who's suffering from any type of addiction, whether it's drugs or vices, such as gambling. Alcoholism they call it an addiction also to alcoholism. But when you commit a crime and there's a prosecutor the crime has to be, the law that you're being prosecuted on or tried in a court of law has to be acknowledged. And if you're locked up because of a crime you committed, whether it's because of an addiction to drugs, addiction to gambling, addiction to anything else. Some people have an addiction to sex, so they commit sometimes crime. Addiction to power, they commit rape or overpower somebody who's more vulnerable than they are. I get that fact, but it just seems like we are not understanding the crime aspect of what's going on here on this island. I want to be compassionate to those who are addicts. The drug dealers, the ones that are bringing in the drugs to this island, is a huge problem. And that is the number one problem. And I don't want to lump together those who are, I'm going to use this term, victims to the drug dealers. But there is one point where addicts were not addicts. There is a point where people made decisions. And I want to talk to that because there are many kids out here who need to hear first that there should be deterrence, or talking of abstinence, or even getting away from even alcohol abuse use, drug use, or even other methods of manipulating the mind or the euphoria, like she said, artificial dopamines, to get through life or to be happy in life. And that's where it should start as well. Not at the end where we have to have treatment. That's important, but let's start talking about that. And a great place to start talking about that is understanding where we are as a society when we decide to. This is where it's going to get tricky, because I'm not a proponent of the recreational use of a lot of marijuana that's been passed, but I understand that it's law now. I'm not a big proponent of putting marijuana in edibles that mimic things that even our kids eat.
Is there a bud in here somewhere?
No, I'm saying that I'm not a proponent of all that stuff, but I feel that we're not being very careful on how we're promoting all of this on the island. We went from medicinal marijuana to recreational marijuana to now wanting to push recreational drugs in our edibles. Again, I understand adults have choices they can make and they make decisions on their own. But there seems to be a kind of responsibility that's being dropped when it comes to things, when it comes to people being ultra-libertarian. I guess that's the word, if there is a such thing as ultra-libertarian, where libertarian is already ultra to me, where we fight very hard to make things equal that our children are susceptible to. We already know that, and as much as I didn't agree with it, it's just funny how the same crowd that made us think about candy cigarettes don't understand the dangers of putting drugs in candy and
gummies.
In gummies. We already saw an instance where a father thought it was a good idea to give it to his kid, even forced him to have it. And yeah, you can do the same with alcohol. People take Jell-O shots all the time, but it's very hard sometimes to see some of these drugs in edibles as opposed to alcohol in Jell-O shots. You can smell the alcohol. You can taste it in there. Again, I'm going to trigger a lot of people right now and get mad at me. But if we want to talk about addiction, we got to talk about a responsibility here, not just on this island, but everywhere else, of the cultures we promote as adults, about the examples we're showing to our children, to the kids, the teenagers that are growing up, who see all of this happening and saying, well, if the adults think it's fine and they're fighting hard for it this way, even the stuff that don't seem to be out of touch for us, why can't I start? And a lot of people don't think that these types of drugs are gateway drugs, but everything is a gateway when it comes to addiction. Because sometimes addiction is not to the chemical, but to the action, to the habit, to have something replace something else that doesn't work for them anymore. So again, but when it comes down to a letter like this, yes, you're right. Compassion needs to be held for those who are addicted to drugs and other things that change the chemical makeup in their brain. But if you commit a crime, which is where they brought it to the AGs, to the factor of an AG or an attorney general, if there's a crime element, a criminal element, especially a violent crime element, you better believe I want the AG to think first about locking that person up and then have other entities talk about treatment afterwards. And that's where it's going to have to go for me. We have a caller in the green room. Trying to put, oh, here we are. Dr. Ron McNitch. Good afternoon. Welcome to the show, Doc.
Hey, how are you, Jose? How's day, Guam? Yeah, I've been following this drug question for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And, there was mild support for medicinal marijuana. It wasn't even very strong. I mean, it was very mediocre. And I got to tell you, my own view of medicinal marijuana, particularly for people in hospice care, let them do whatever they need to do. That's my feeling about drugs for people who are particularly who have severe medical issues. I've never had an issue with it. But they made a major leap, major mega leap from a middle policy of medical marijuana to help people who might benefit from it in some way medicinally, to just the total throw the baby out with the bathwater, use drugs anytime you want to use drugs. And I think that was a mistake. I don't think that was helpful at all. I don't think that the people who were passing this law took the time or took the effort to really understand what they were doing, because what they enacted really was a policy of replacement, and nobody's talked about that yet. Basically, people who sell illegal drugs, they don't have to sell marijuana. They'll sell anything they can that's illegal. And so we're going to basically shift to having things like fentanyl and oxycodone and all these other heavy-duty drugs that have very, meth and everything else, have very bad physical consequences because of replacement theory. That is, drug dealers, because they can't sell illegal marijuana anymore, because they've made this, and not only that, they've tried to convince everyone they can create an entire tourism industry out of this silliness.
I don't think that's ever going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And you know what else? It's like an episode off of the Lucy Show or something. Her and Ethel have come up with this scheme to change, their lives totally or whatever. No, that's not what's going to happen. We're going to just end up having more problems, and here's the key thing that really bothers me. We have a nested complexity of social policy here. Why do we have homeless people? Well, we have homeless people for one of three reasons. Either they're genuinely poor, that is, people who come here don't have family, don't have a support system, don't have a network. They end up with their little kids living under cardboard and dead-a-dough. And then there are those that are mentally ill, whose families haven't been able to put up with them, and they end up on the street. And or they have major drug problems, so they live on the street. And I think one thing that nobody thought of when they thought of all this, wow, let's totally radicalize our drug policy on Guam, they didn't give any thought to what's actually going to happen. We're going to end up having exactly what's going on now in places like San Francisco and Portland. We haven't seen it to the extent yet that other jurisdictions have, but we're going to have homeless drug addict cities here that we're going to have major issues with, and of size. We have them in minor scales now, but it's just going to go through the roof, I think, in the next couple of years, given the permissive drug policy.
Yeah. And then that's also my issue. Your sentiment about where it went from medicinal to recreational, I just felt like it was a bait and switch for me. And I'm probably getting a lot of my friends mad right now that I know that that delve in recreational. And I have to admit, when I was younger, because I am older now, there was it wasn't a time, there was an instant where I tried it at a party, and unfortunately, from what my friends tell me, that this person who brought it had added something to it. And the only reason they said that is because a lot of people were sick afterwards or had passed out or something like that. And that's another danger that I see with introducing recreational drugs like this, because of the additives that are put into it. Bob Klitzkie had read an article detailing the dangerous levels of the addictive material and the toxins in marijuana these days, how a lot of that's been increased, mainly because people don't have the same tolerances they had before, or they have more tolerance than they've had before.
No, it's even more than that.
It's more potent, right?
Yeah, they have genetically selected marijuana to not the marijuana of the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s anymore. We're talking about major effect, cultivated use kind of major impact drugs that are nothing like the drugs of that many young people grew up with. But there's one other quick thing I was going to mention briefly, and that is, if they had simply decriminalized marijuana and said, we're not going to put people in jail anymore for marijuana, we don't want people trafficking in marijuana, but decriminalize it, that probably would have been far better than what they did, which was to say, smoke them if you got them, recreational's okay as long as you're over 21, smoke it if you got it, no problem at all. I don't think that was helpful. I think that if somebody wants to use marijuana, hey, I don't have any issue with that. I'm a libertarian on use, and I'm also libertarian on decriminalization. But what I didn't like was the radicalization of our tourism industry to try to suit some artificial, it's like I said, it's like an episode off of the Lucy show. They haven't given any policy thought to what Japan or Korea or our major markets think of this. They haven't given any thought of what's going to happen. Who wants Guam to be the Amsterdam of the Pacific, right? I don't.
Nope.
I've been to Amsterdam. It's an armpit. It's not the drug utopia people think it is. It's incredibly horrible in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's again, this stems from this influx of meth on our island now, and I really doubt anyone can tell me that people who are addicted to meth did not start out with smaller stuff. I say smaller because people always say it's not the same drug as all these hard drugs. And we're also seeing an influx of fentanyl in the United States. I don't know how much of it is an issue here on Guam, because it has taken over some of the, I guess, the designer drugs that adults and kids use in the States. But that whole mentality, that whole mindset of the recreational use of something like this can have an introduction of fentanyl later on, because tolerances have been built up, or we can't bring things to the island anymore.
And if people think the death rate in the U.S. mainland is bad due to fentanyl or even OxyContin, it's going to be even worse here. Because right now, I mean, you can get Narcan and maybe get help on an emergency basis. There's no way that we could support that kind of environment here. It's just simply not something we'd keep up with. We're just going to end up, you might as well, right now, you can write down this date, September 29, 2022, as being the day that you look at things differently, because we're going to have a very strong influx of these crazy drugs that are going to come in, and it's going to overwhelm any capacity issue that, in fact, wait until we start having tourists get killed from this stuff, and we end up getting that terrible Amsterdam-like reputation.
I don't want to see it, but that just rubbed me wrong. The whole edible section of what was been going on with recreational marijuana and the law, and it just, I wish we had. I know we have public input from the legislature. There was a time for it, but sometimes I don't know. I don't want to.
That's why we have elections,
I know,
Jose.
I know. Well, the one senator.
Who's sponsoring the edibles? Do you know?
Well, the person who sponsors. You mean in the legislature?
Yeah, let's not vote for that person.
Well, that person's not running for office anymore.
It took 7 more people to vote it in.
I do have to commend Clint Rochelle, though. That was his platform, and he was one of the more successful people who stayed at a platform of pushing recreational marijuana and got it passed. But again,
it takes 7 more than the author.
That's true too. But again, I want to bring this down to addiction and where it begins, and it begins with this mindset, and it begins with understanding why are we always trying to mess with our heads. I know that even in indigenous cultures they did things, but ceremonial. It wasn't recreational and everyday. Otherwise, these people would not exist anymore because everybody would be out lollygagging all day. You know, I know a lot of people who are functional when they smoke marijuana, which is incredible because I know a lot more people who can't do anything afterwards, who have to sit and log around. So I'm going to say that I don't think that recreational or mind-altering stuff was an everyday daily activity for any group of society, any society. And whenever we saw a degradation of society or a way to depict them in film or in art, what do you always see? Decadence, right? Overuse of alcohol or anything else, mind-altering. That's not just Hollywood. Look at it. Look at some of the art where you see the
Limehouse Blues.
And so it's a conversation I think we have to have before we. Well, it's already long past, anyways. Everything's been
and nobody
passed.
ever talks about the double threat of marijuana and Nintendo.
Nintendo.
Oh my God! Talk about a wasted life.
I don't know about
You ever know anybody who sits around, smokes marijuana, and plays video games almost 18 hours a day?
I did know about 20 years ago guys like that, and everybody was amazed that I wasn't one of them. But they were all my friends.
And where are they now?
I don't know. None of them are on Facebook. I'm over here on Quam. Doc, Rod, I thank you for calling in and helping me with this perspective.
Hey,
yeah.
One final point. I don't have any issue with people smoking marijuana. I just don't like that they made a whole industry out of it.
Yes.
That's my issue.
Yeah, and all my friends who smoke and dabble in it know the same thing. I've never bothered anybody who was around me about it, and no one's pushed me either. But at the same time, I'm not comfortable with this industry.
And stay off the roads because you drive too slow.
Have a good day, Doc. We'll talk to you later.
All right, man, thank you.
You're listening to Tall Tales here on KUSG 93.3 FM. If I ruffled your feathers, please call in because we still have a half of the second half to go.
671
We'll be right back.
888-8255.
There you go. Don't go away. 7th inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training every morning on The Ray Gibson Show.
Does your physical workplace have an impact on the mental outlook of workers, their overall job satisfaction, and their productivity? I'm Jerry Roberts, and at 7:20 a.m. on The Ray Gibson Show, we'll talk about that and what you might want to do about it. It's The Extra Point here on 93.3.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point by Jerry Roberts at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts on The Ray Gibson Show on 93.3 The Point.
Shop and Win is back at Micronesia Mall. Beginning August 6th, shop and redeem receipts for a chance to win instant prizes from Burger King or Foot Locker, or receive a grand prize entry form for our first raffle drawing on November 12th for your chance to win a 2022 Toyota Corolla LE courtesy of Atkins Scroll Toyota. Plus, 10 lucky runners-up will receive a $250 gift certificate from Goodwin Travel and Tour for tickets for Philippine Airlines.
Shop more, win more.
Only at Micronesia Mall. Terms and conditions apply.
that is the 7th inning stretch. We have 2 more innings to go before the end of the show. I want to thank Doc for calling in and maybe spreading some of the heat so I don't take so much more. You know, it's interesting that I watched a little bit of the tail end. I want to say tail end because I don't think I saw the very beginning parts of the AG debate today, the candidate debate. I don't know if you saw any of it or
Nah,
okay.
I was driving around.
Very interesting. They focused mostly on crime, public safety, things like that.
Were there 3 of them or 2 of them?
There was 3 of them. Attorney General Levin Camacho, former Attorney General Doug Moylan, and write-in candidate Attorney Peter Repeat Santos. Repeat because that's how he's known here on Tall Tales and the Ray Gibson Show. But what I found interesting is that this was a race between Attorney Doug Moylan and AG Camacho. And there's plenty. I started to see plenty of back and forth and picking on each other's records and other things like that too. But with the introduction of Pete Santos into the debate, it almost looked like General Camacho and Attorney Santos were the ones going after each other more on, I want to say on the ad hominem part. I don't know if anybody else caught that, but it was very interesting because I could see Doug just sitting there watching a lot of what's happening. Now, they did bring up a lot of Doug Moylan's record, of course, and of course Pete Santos went against Levin Camacho's current record. But there were some points that both Santos and Camacho made that seemed a little petty. Camacho brought up the one point, and I'm going to bring up that I thought was very interesting was Pete Santos brought up the fact that he grew up poor and paycheck to paycheck and was the everyday man. And Camacho came back and said, funny, you weren't the everyday man when you spent $100,000 or thousands of dollars going after MSN. And I was like, wow, no, did anybody pick that up? Because that to me was like, that's one of those things you see in national debates that gets the headline everywhere, right?
Well, if he did spend the money going after Mike St. Nicholas, then that should be pointed out. If it was, but and he's a lawyer now, so you know it has nothing to do with his childhood.
I know, but it just kind of it didn't fit. It didn't fit. It seemed like
It's
more of a
campaign time.
I know. Come on. This is supposed to be the most important race. They kept telling us the AG's race is the most important race in the election season right now on Guam.
It doesn't matter whether the legislature switches a party or which candidate for.
But then again, the people telling us it's the most important race was the Guam Bar Association. So there you go.
Yeah, because they were, of course,
it's important for them. But again, it was very interesting. And one more thing that I thought was interesting is the attorney at the closing remarks. Each one talked about what they'd be doing and things like that. And Attorney General focused on issues, which was interesting. He kind of sounded like other attorney generals in the states who are focusing on issues outside of prosecution and stuff like environmental stuff, because Levin Camacho brought up environment, protecting the environment. He brought up abortion also. He specifically said, I need to do the work that I'm continuing doing. We have things that are coming up like criminalizing abortion. And when he said that, I was like, that's very interesting, because the law of Guam does criminalize abortion, even though he didn't put out, he didn't, according to Bob Klitzkie and his research, that he didn't go far enough in researching the fact of whether or not he can call for the lifting of the injunction on the bill that was passed in 1990 that criminalized abortion. And I always thought that the Attorney General, whether they agree or not, has to follow the law and defend the law of the land of the government or of the island. But Nobody else brought that up, so I thought that was interesting that he brought that up. And so I guess this is going to be if people are a little bit more finessed or fine-tuned to what this attorney general race is going to be about, if you can brush away all the ad hominem and all the clever attacks, it's going to be about somebody who is focused on one thing, or which they focus. Well, they focused a lot on crime and punishment and court cases, or you want an attorney general who focuses on, for lack of a better term, activism.
The AG
right?
the AG position is not the elected prosecutor. That's just one division.
I know that, but that's what they talked about today. Yeah, so somebody who was at the debate, Ken Leon Guerrero, good afternoon. Welcome to Tall Tales. What did you see?
Well, I saw the reason why I feel it's so important that on the voter initiative we passed separating the office of the prosecutor from the attorney general's office, because when we were listening to the three candidates up there, to me, Levin Camacho came across more like bipolar. I'm the government. I'm the attorney for the government. I represent the people. Well, to my view, his track record says that he's the attorney for the government. And a couple of times I tried to raise issues with the Attorney General's office. I was told to get private counsel because the Attorney General would be representing the government on the opposite side of my complaint. So that's why I believe we need to separate those two offices, because when the Attorney General makes serving the government and the governor and its officers a priority over serving the people, that's an issue. And we saw the differences in the attitudes of the three candidates. First we had Doug Moylan, who came across as, he would make serving the people a higher priority than serving the governor. Then we had Levin Camacho, who came across as, I serve the governor and the government while representing the people. And then the big issue I had with Pete Santos is, I think he would have been a more credible candidate if he'd actually run in the primary instead of spending the entire primary bashing a candidate in an office he wasn't running for. I think that just kind of, I think it knocks him out of contention. But that's just my personal point of view, because all we got from him is not so much a vision for the future of the Attorney General's office as an explanation of where he's been and what he's done. I didn't.
It was kind of a get to know me moment, because he's just came in as a writing candidate, and technically this is the first people are hearing of him, even though he's been out there in public, and I'm sure a lot of people do know of him. He had to have this opportunity to give his resume, because who else knows?
Yeah, that's why I said he would have been a more credible candidate, because I remember back in February, March, he was actively talking about running for the office of the Attorney General, and I was looking forward to him running for Attorney General. And at the beginning, when he was talking, he sounded more like a candidate for the Attorney General until he got on his, troll mission. But the part that I was frustrated with in this event is they spent more time talking about the past, and we had that one question about the future. Because the past is done. Nothing we can say or do is going to change the past. I was looking for vision. I was looking for, a way that I could see a way that things would come out and unfold. And I thought Doug did a better job than Levin on that, because Levin's plan for the future is basically stay the course. And my concern about that is when people I know, myself included, who are thinking about buying guns because we no longer feel safe in our residences, We live behind bars. We have, I mean, look at all the videos that get posted because we've turned our homes into prisons. And, you know, I've been in court when they go through the docket and hear all the, you know, one prosecutor will release on PR, you know, like the next 10 names in a row, release on personal recognizance, you know. So that didn't say a lot to me. And to sit there and take a lot of credit for putting his name on a letter to work done by other attorney generals, you know. So that was it. You know, I was hoping to get a vision for the future. The closest we got was Doug, and I think he even, you know, apologized to the people of Guam for some of his antics in the past.
Yeah, there was a part where they asked, what was the thing that you wish you could change, that you knew that was a mistake or something that you could have changed. Again, here's another part that I can look at what I found interesting was Doug Moreland did something and called out something personal. Pete Santos called out something personal that he wished he could change. And Leland Camacho wished that he had set up a Facebook page. And I was like, well, I don't think that was the question. But the answer is revealing as well.
Yeah. I mean, talk about dollar short, day late, you know. But the important thing for me in that was the fact that people who I know that were watching as well, I called around and asked a few people if they watched it and what they thought of it. And they were hoping that there would be some more events with more serious questions. It was kind of like the first gubernatorial debate where 90% of the questions were, how will you attract and retain doctors? You know, you can only answer that question so many times.
Right. And wasn't there another one they said was going to happen that they invited Pete Santos to? I don't know if it was the Guam Bar Association. I thought it was announced there at the podium before the debate ended.
And I might have been gone by then.
Ken, I want to thank you for calling in. We do have to go to Churchill Downs. We have somebody else on the line that was there, and I'm going to get to him right after we get back from the break. So thanks again for calling in and giving us your point. All right, have a good one. We'll be right back after Churchill Downs with Repeat, who says he was there too. TOO. Don't go away. We'll be right back with more Tall Tales.
Are you looking for a new place to hang out with your friends? Let's go along the sidelines at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Located at 154 Iriarte Road, Unit 4 and 5 in Tamuning behind Royal Bigs. Sidelines, a hidden gem with nothing but great things to offer. Great atmosphere, great food, top shelf drinks, and a great team. What are we waiting for? Let the fun begin at Sidelines Bar and Grill. Open daily from 3 p.m. to 2 a.m. See you there.
Tell me about it, stud.
Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Festival is back on Saturday, October 22nd. We rockin' and rollin' at the Dusatani Guam Resort from 2 to 10 p.m. Bring your friends and come dressed in your best grease costume to win up to $500 in cash and prizes. So bust out those leather jackets and 50-style outfits as we party the night away at Circle K's Craft Beer and Whiskey Fest. Don't be a square. Get your tickets now at craftbeerfestguam.com or cruise on by any 76 Circle K location. Now that's cool, baby.
Churchill Downs final stretch. We are in the last few minutes of today's program here on Tall Tales. And in the green room, we do have candidate Pete Santos or Repeat. Which one?
Right in the right man.
All right.
Right in candidate, yes. Yes, so a little background information, some more background information. That was my first debate ever.
Oh, okay.
So I got my cherry pop today. And so anyways, I mean, I've done stand-up comedy as some people know, and I speak in front of the court. So public speaking is something I'm used to, but being in a debate, much less a three-way debate, that's the first time I've ever done anything like that. And I do know that I stand to do some improvement. unlike Levin, I will recognize some of my shortfalls, right? And I do know that I do need to be a better orator and articulate a little bit more. I heard Ken, and I totally agree with him. I should have focused a little bit more on what my vision would be, but that's just, me being inexperienced in I guess an inexperienced politician rather. And, I agree with him that I needed to explain a little bit more about my plan and what about the other divisions other than prosecution. It seemed like that I focused on prosecution, but in my mind, those other divisions are doing quite well, can stand for more improvement, but those are all the same people that were there under Elizabeth Barrett Anderson.
Well, what do you say about dividing the AG's office from a prosecutor, from a chief prosecutor? What would be the terminology?
Right, an elected
chief prosecutor. Yeah, right.
Right. That is a great idea, but we're not there yet. Mm-hmm. So this is what we have to deal with now. This is how we have to skin this cat at the current moment. That is something that I've heard other AGs that were in the seat before say, and that's something that they would testify to and they would support. And so I think it's actually a great idea. But like I said, we're not there. We're not at that point. But there is a mechanism. This is to address Ken's concern about Levin's attitude that he is the governor's lawyer. There is a mechanism in the statutes that say that whenever there's a conflict, they can hire either an agency or the governor's office. They can hire an independent counsel, independent of the attorney general's office.
And they have.
And they have.
Right.
So it doesn't happen often. A lot of times the autonomous agencies and even some of the line agencies are able to hire in-house counsel.
Right.
And so it's only the more smaller agencies that don't have the funding or the constant need to have an in-house counsel.
So
they rely on the AG's office to provide legal services to them.
So I'm going to ask you general questions because I know that.
But I'm not a general.
No, you're not. Not yet.
Not yet.
What is your knowledge of when it transitioned from being an appointed position to an elected position? Was there any language in the statute when that transition happened that separated the attorney general from the governor, or was it still in there?
Can you clarify the question?
Because it seems like there seems to be a discrepancy between who the attorney general serves. Solely the people or solely the governor? And I know Attorney General Camacho said both, with the emphasis on the governor first and then the people as well. But was there a separation distinctly made when the transition went from the appointed position to an elected position?
Well, let me clarify. The Attorney General is the chief legal officer of the island, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not explicit in the language on who he serves. It's more implicit that he serves the government of Guam, but he also serves the public.
Mm-hmm.
And he serves it in, and when I say he, I'm not talking about Levin specifically. I'm talking about the
position,
Attorney General,
the Attorney General, right?
The position, right? So he's the chief legal officer. He's also the chief prosecutor. So he's also he could in some instances assist the governor and even the legislature, depending. It's all case dependent,
mm-hmm.
right? And it's up to the Attorney General to decide when they need to conflict out, right? But as a general matter, the AG is the people's attorney.
Okay.
But the people includes the people includes the government of Guam. It includes the governor. It includes the private sector, right?
Okay.
Right, and you represent you're representing basically enforcing the law, the policies that have been passed by the legislature.
Right, and to also defend it in court if someone should try to
Challenge it, right?
Challenge it for constitutionality, or if the Attorney General himself thinks that a law is unconstitutional, he has the standing to take it and get it and challenge a law that he believes is unconstitutional.
So, Pete, there was a caller just called up and asked whether you knew anything about 2 court cases that were dismissed today because of lack of AG representation.
So that was actually yesterday, and one of them was my case. So I started a trial, but I was supposed to start 2 different trials, and my boss was going to cover the other trial. I started the Jojo Garcia trial yesterday, and yesterday also was supposed to start a trial that I was assigned to, or a case that I was assigned to, but because I was doing the Jojo Garcia trial, she was going to take that other trial. But lo and behold, it got dismissed because there's no one to substitute for a prosecutor who caught COVID. You know, but that shouldn't be an excuse. There should be enough prosecutors to cover down. Look, my boss is covering down for me. Why don't they have enough prosecutors to cover down for that one prosecutor that caught COVID, right? And then there was another case as well. It didn't belong to our office. It belongs to the public defender. But again, that case was dismissed because they didn't have a prosecutor to try the case.
Pete, we have just a couple of minutes left, a couple of seconds left. Ken wasn't sure if there was a second debate or something that was going to be scheduled. I thought I heard somebody invite you to something. Can you tell us if there is something that's going to have all 3 of you on stage again?
Yes, so that's Dr. McNintz's crew. They work together with the Guam Bar on the one that happened today. And then they're doing their own at the University of Guam. I believe it's October 30th, or I was hoping it would be October 31st so we could all dress in costume.
Oh, boy. I'm going to leave that one alone.
We would have Eric the Eagle, and I don't know what leaving would be, but I'd probably come in as a soldier.
As a twin. Anyways, thanks for calling in, Pete, and clarifying some things, and for clarifying that you two were there at the debate.
Yeah,
have a great
and I got my cherry pop.
Yes, you did. All right, have a great one. You're listening to KUS Tall Tales on KUSG 93.3 FM. I get flustered at jokes like that, and I always tell jokes like that all the time. Of course, we want to say goodbye to our prestigious. Oh, I'm not on the screen anymore.
We're not talking about about one of the twins up at National Weather Service, Teaser.
No. My camera went away. There it goes. Even though he might not even understand these words anymore, let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
News alert. Hurricane Ian hanging on. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. One of the biggest storms ever to hit the U.S., weakening, but
winds up and over 75 miles per hour. It is still a hurricane even 12 hours later after being starved from its primary source for fuel, which is the ocean. It has been over land now for 12 hours. It is still a hurricane, and it is producing all kinds of rainfall.
Meteorologist Michael Estime of Fox Weather along the Atlantic coast. Volusia County Sheriff Mike Chitwood tells Fox News.
When this is over, we're going to get over 30 inches. That's going to be of rain. That's going to be devastating to this county, in particular to the little towns like Astor, and Lake Harney that sit on the St. Johns River and Lake Monroe, they are going to be absolutely inundated.
The National Weather Service says torrential rainfall is triggering flash flooding just west of the Orlando area. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis says recovery efforts are beginning soon.
As soon as it moves beyond southwest Florida, you're going to see a massive surge of personnel and supplies to be able to help those who are in need, get people back on their feet, and help to rebuild those communities.
More than 2.5 million electric customers in Florida are now without power. The rain and the winds have begun to dissipate along the state's southwest coastline, where Ian made landfall Wednesday afternoon as a strong Category 4 storm. But the storm surge will take longer to recede. Some of the evacuees from coastal communities are learning they no longer have homes to return to. The storm expected to cross into the Atlantic later today and then make another landfall along the Georgia or South Carolina coastline tomorrow. In baseball, Yankees slugger Aaron Judge has hit his 61st home run of the season, tying the American League record set by Roger Maris in 1961. Wall Street Wednesday, the Dow climbed 548 points, the S&P 500 71 points higher. America is listening to Fox News.